Across the misty expanse of the North Atlantic, a wooden dragon cuts through waves higher than a man. The vessel rides each swell with practiced grace, its crew of 30 weathered sailors scanning the horizon. No charts guide them, no instruments point their way. Yet they sail with unwavering confidence toward lands beyond the edge of their known world. This is the story of how the Vikings conquered the greatest challenge of their age, the open ocean itself. Before we begin this journey into the Viking Age, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? It's always fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the world. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications. Every subscription helps us keep exploring the real stories behind the legends. Now, let's begin. The medieval world of the 8th century existed as isolated kingdoms, separated by the seemingly impenetrable barrier of the open sea. To most European powers, the ocean represented the end of possibility, a dangerous void best avoided. Trade routes hugged coastlines, and few dared venture beyond sight of land. But far to the north, the Norse people developed a unique relationship with the sea, not as a boundary, but as a highway to new worlds. The fjord-carved coasts of Norway, the rocky shores of Denmark, and the islands of Sweden shaped a people whose survival depended on maritime skill. Long winters and limited farmland pushed communities toward the water's edge, where fishing supplemented their diets and coastal trading became essential. The sea was not something to fear. It was their provider, their connection to others, and ultimately their path to expansion. The Norse worldview prepared them for exploration. Their cosmology spoke of 9 realms connected by the world tree Yggdrasil, with Midgard, the world of humans, as just one domain among many. This comfort with multiple worlds perhaps made them more willing to seek unknown lands. Their sagas celebrated heroes who ventured into unfamiliar realms and returned transformed. Within this mindset, the dangerous voyage across open water became not just possible, but necessary for those seeking to make their mark. Life in Scandinavia during the Viking Age was deeply connected to the sea. Coastal settlements positioned themselves to maximize access to maritime resources. Many households maintained at least one boat as essential to their lifestyle as a car might be in our modern world. Even inland communities maintained networks of rivers and portages that connected them to the coastal trading centers. The ability to navigate water was not a specialized skill, but a fundamental aspect of Norse daily life, one that would eventually transform into the long-distance voyaging that made the Vikings famous and feared throughout the medieval world. The foundation of Viking navigational prowess began with their vessels. The longship represents one of humanity's greatest technological achievements, a perfect marriage of form and function. Built using the clinker technique with overlapping planks secured to a flexible keel, these ships could withstand the punishing North Atlantic while remaining light enough to be carried across portages. The shallow draft allowed Vikings to navigate rivers and beach directly on shores, eliminating the need for harbors. A single square sail harnessed the power of prevailing winds, while oars provided propulsion in calm conditions. Viking longships were sophisticated machines built by master craftsmen. Every timber was hand-selected, oak for strength in the keel, pine for flexibility in the strakes. The symmetrical design allowed the ship to reverse direction without turning, simply by having the crew change seats. The iconic dragonheads mounted on prows served both to intimidate enemies and as protection against malevolent sea spirits. These vessels represented massive investments of resources and labor, highlighting their central importance to Norse society. The construction of a longship required specialized knowledge passed through generations. Shipwrights selected trees that had grown in particular conditions, understanding how the grain of the wood would affect the vessel's performance. They split rather than sawed planks, preserving the natural strength of the wood fibers. Iron rivets secured the overlapping planks, creating a hull that could flex with the waves, rather than fighting against them. The resulting vessels were lightweight, yet remarkably seaworthy, capable of speeds that would not be surpassed until the clipper ships of the 19th century. These technological innovations formed the essential platform upon which Viking navigational methods were built. The technical capabilities of these ships transformed the possibilities of northern European travel. With a top speed of around 15 knots under ideal conditions and the ability to safely traverse open ocean, the longship expanded the Norse horizon dramatically. Suddenly, lands previously considered too distant became potential destinations. Ireland, England, France, Spain, and eventually Iceland, Greenland, and North America all fell within reach of these remarkable vessels. But a ship alone cannot find its way across a featureless ocean. For that, the Vikings needed something equally innovative: their navigational methods. How does one find direction on an open sea without a compass? The Norse navigators developed a sophisticated set of techniques that combined careful observation with accumulated knowledge. The most fundamental was solar navigation. By tracking the position of the sun throughout the day, experienced sailors could maintain a relatively consistent heading. The Vikings understood that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, providing cardinal directions at those times. At midday, when the sun reached its highest point, they could identify south with reasonable accuracy. By dividing the horizon into 8 primary directions, a system they called Etter, they created a mental compass rose. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated the effectiveness of solar navigation even in northern latitudes. Modern sailors retracing Viking routes have used replicas of simple instruments that may have aided Norse navigators. A wooden disc with a central gnomon could cast shadows indicating direction when the sun was visible. The length of the shadow would also provide information about latitude, longer shadows indicating higher northern positions. Such instruments required no advanced technology or mathematical knowledge, yet when combined with experience and observational skill, they enabled reliable navigation across vast distances. The night sky offered even more precise guidance. Polaris, the North Star, remains almost stationary in the northern sky, while other stars appear to rotate around it. By locating this constant celestial marker, Viking navigators could determine true north on clear nights with remarkable accuracy. The Norse sailors recognized distinct star patterns and used them to orient their vessels. During the brief summer nights of northern latitudes, the celestial navigation became particularly valuable, allowing for continual sailing through the twilight hours when the sun never fully set. The Vikings may have further refined their celestial navigation through an instrument mentioned in their sagas called a solar stein or sunstone. Some researchers believe this could have been a crystal of Icelandic spar, which has the property of polarizing light. By observing the patterns of light through such a crystal, navigators might have determined the sun's position even on cloudy days. Archaeological evidence remains limited, but experimental reconstructions suggest such techniques were possible and could have provided crucial navigational information when other methods failed. As Viking exploration pushed farther from familiar shores, they developed a system based on accumulated knowledge. Each successful voyage added to a mental library of routes, landmarks, and sailing times. The Norse concept of havila, being bewildered at sea, was greatly feared, indicating how important reliable navigation was to their maritime culture. To counter this, they created mental maps of sea days, the typical time needed to travel between known locations under normal conditions. These established routes became cultural knowledge passed between generations of sailors. The depth of Viking navigational knowledge can be seen in the precision of their sailing descriptions. The route from Norway to Iceland, for example, was described as sailing west from Stad in Norway for 7 days, after which one would reach the eastern coast of Iceland. Similar descriptions exist for routes between various Norse settlements, often specifying the number of days required for the journey. These standardized routes served as mental frameworks for navigation, allowing sailors to maintain a general heading while adjusting for daily conditions. The accuracy of these sea day measurements demonstrates the consistency and reliability of Viking navigation methods. The Vikings' attunement to nature extended beyond observation of celestial bodies. They became masters at reading the subtle signs of nearby land, even when it remained beyond the horizon. Particular cloud formations gathering over islands, changes in wave patterns, floating vegetation, or the presence of certain birds all served as indicators. The flight paths of land birds, like ravens, were especially useful. When released from a ship, these birds would fly toward land if it was nearby, providing a natural direction finder. The sagas tell of the Norse explorer Floki Vilgerdarson, who used ravens to locate Iceland, earning him the nickname Raven Floki. According to the Landnámabók, Floki took 3 ravens aboard his ship as he sailed westward from Norway. After releasing the first raven, it flew back toward Norway, indicating land was still closer behind them. The second raven flew up and then returned to the ship, suggesting no land was visible in any direction. When he released the third raven, it flew forward and did not return, a clear sign that land lay ahead. Following the raven's flight path, Floki discovered Iceland. This method of navigation demonstrates the Vikings' pragmatic use of natural resources to solve the challenges of ocean voyaging. When Norse sailors made landfall on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793 CE, they shocked the Anglo-Saxon world with their seemingly supernatural ability to appear from nowhere. Chroniclers wrote with astonishment about men who could navigate the deep abyss of the ocean at will. This navigational advantage gave the Vikings a strategic edge that would fuel their expansion for centuries. They could strike without warning, retreat beyond pursuit, and establish trade networks spanning thousands of miles. The reaction of contemporaries to Viking navigational abilities reveals how revolutionary these techniques appeared to other European cultures. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records raids with language suggesting supernatural capabilities. Never before has such terror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered from a pagan race, nor was it thought that their coming was possible. The ability of Norse sailors to appear suddenly from the open ocean and disappear again beyond pursuit seemed almost magical to coastal populations accustomed to thinking of the sea as an impassable barrier. This navigational advantage contributed significantly to the Vikings' military and commercial success throughout the medieval period. In the minds of Christian European kingdoms, the sea represented chaos and danger, a barrier established by God. The Vikings' mastery of this domain seemed almost heretical to some observers. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records the reaction to early raids with language suggesting divine punishment. Fiery dragons were seen flying in the air. The technological reality of Viking navigation had taken on mythic proportions in the eyes of those who encountered them. The aftermath of this navigational breakthrough reshaped the map of Europe. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, Norse sailors established settlements from Russia to North America. Their trade networks connected Baghdad to Newfoundland, exchanging goods and ideas across distances previously unimaginable. Silver from Arabian mints has been found in Viking graves in Scandinavia, while Norse artifacts have been uncovered at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, material evidence of the vast reach enabled by their navigational abilities. Weather prediction formed another crucial element of Viking navigation. Through generations of observation, Norse sailors developed a sophisticated understanding of cloud formations, wind patterns, and sea states that indicated coming storms or favorable conditions. The sailors' ability to read these signs determined when to sail and when to seek shelter. This knowledge became codified in sayings and proverbs passed between generations. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in morning, sailors take warning, reflects observations still considered valid by meteorologists today. Their survival depended on this intimate knowledge of natural patterns. The Vikings' understanding of the relationship between weather and sea conditions demonstrates their observational sophistication. They recognized how wind direction affected wave patterns and how these patterns could persist even after the wind had changed. What modern sailors call sea versus swell. This knowledge allowed them to deduce recent weather in areas they had not yet reached and to predict conditions they might encounter. The sagas describe sailors making decisions based on cloud formations observed at dawn or the appearance of the sunset. These details reveal a culture that had developed a complex framework for understanding and predicting maritime weather patterns crucial to successful navigation. The chronicles and sagas that record Viking voyages reveal a people comfortable with uncertainty but committed to recording successful routes. The Icelandic manuscript known as Landnámabók provides detailed sailing directions between Norway, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland. It describes the optimal seasons for voyages and landmarks to seek along the way. The Norse sagas speak of navigation in practical terms, suggesting that while spiritual in many aspects of life, the Vikings approached wayfinding with pragmatic attention to observable phenomena. The Norse explorer Eric the Red established the first European settlement in Greenland after finding his way there in the late 10th century. His son Leif Erikson would push even further, reaching North America around the year 1000 CE, nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. According to the Vinland sagas, Leif was blown off course while attempting to follow his father's route to Greenland. Instead of panicking when confronted with unknown shores, he methodically explored the coastline, identifying distinct landscapes he named Helluland, land of flat stones, Markland, land of forests, and Vinland, land of meadows or wine. This systematic approach to unexpected discovery reveals the confidence that came from mastery of navigational techniques. These remarkable voyages were not random discoveries, but the result of purposeful navigation across the world's most challenging seas. The Norse settlements in Greenland would last for nearly 500 years, maintained by sailors who could reliably cross vast 800 miles of open ocean between Scandinavia and their distant colony. Regular communication between these far-flung outposts of Norse culture depended entirely on the navigational skills passed between generations of seafarers. Viking navigational prowess also depended on their understanding of seasonal rhythms. They recognized that certain routes were only viable during specific months, when prevailing winds and currents favored their journey. Summer voyages were preferred for most open ocean crossings, taking advantage of the midnight sun in northern latitudes to sail continuously. Winter journeys were avoided when possible, as violent storms and sea ice posed severe hazards. This knowledge of seasonal sailing windows was crucial for the success and safety of long-distance voyages. The Vikings' ability to track and follow ocean currents demonstrates their observational acuity. They identified and utilized the North Atlantic Drift, the northern extension of the Gulf Stream, to assist their eastward journeys from North America and Greenland back to Europe. The sailors noted how floating objects moved in the water, the subtle temperature differences between currents, and even the distinctive coloration that marked the boundaries between water masses. By working with these natural forces rather than against them, they minimized energy expenditure and maximized their vessels' efficiency. As the Viking Age approached its end, their navigational knowledge became even more refined. The accumulation of generational wisdom about winds, currents, and seasonal patterns created reliable maritime highways across the North Atlantic. What had once been extraordinary voyages became regular passages. Norse traders, settlers, and explorers moved between continents with a confidence unmatched by any other medieval culture. Their ships and navigational methods remained superior to anything in Europe until well after the Viking Age had ended. The gradual adoption of Christianity throughout Scandinavia in the 11th century coincided with the decline of Viking expansion. As Norse kingdoms integrated into European political systems, the independent voyaging tradition slowly transformed. The navigational knowledge that had once been cultural wisdom, passed between sailors, became formalized in the first primitive charts. The Vikings' mental maps began to take physical form, their routes recorded for future generations who would navigate with different tools and different purposes. Archaeological evidence supports the sophistication of Viking navigation. The Unertok disk, discovered in Greenland, may have been a sun compass that, when combined with a shadow stick, could have helped determine direction and latitude. Finds of bearing dials and fragments of navigational instruments suggest the Vikings may have used more tools than the sagas explicitly mention. The archaeological record is sparse, but what remains indicates a maritime culture that blended intuitive knowledge with practical instrumentation. The remnants of Viking settlements along their navigational routes tell a story of remarkable precision. The locations of Norse outposts in Iceland, Greenland, and beyond reveal a pattern of strategic placement. Sites chosen for their harbors, access to resources, and defensibility. These settlements often served as waypoints along established sailing routes, creating a chain of secure harbors across the North Atlantic. The navigational knowledge required to consistently locate these distant shores and return home safely demonstrates the sophisticated mental mapping capabilities of Viking sailors. Maritime archaeologists have discovered evidence of Viking harbors designed to support their navigational achievements. These facilities included stone-built jetties, boathouses, and rudimentary lighthouses, or signal fires, positioned at harbor entrances. Such infrastructure suggests an organized approach to maritime travel, with designated ports functioning as nodes in an extensive nautical network. These harbors would have served as repositories of navigational knowledge, where sailors could exchange information about routes, conditions, and distant lands before embarking on their next voyage. The legacy of Viking navigation resonates into our modern world. Their routes across the North Atlantic established the first connections between Europe and North America, connections that would eventually reshape human history. Their practical approach to problem-solving, observing natural phenomena, and developing innovative solutions exemplifies a scientific mindset centuries ahead of its time. They accomplished feats of navigation that modern sailors with GPS and satellite imagery would find challenging even today. The Viking story reminds us that technology need not be complex to be revolutionary. They conquered the North Atlantic with wooden ships, keen observation, and cultural knowledge accumulated through generations of trial and error. In an age of constant technological advancement, there is something profound in recognizing how much was achieved with so little. The Norse navigators found their way across seemingly impossible distances, not through instruments, but through an intimate relationship with the natural world, reading the sun, stars, winds, birds, and waves as signals pointing toward distant shores. In the waters near Iceland, Norway, and the Faroe Islands, modern sailors still use navigational techniques with direct links to Viking methods. Local fishermen speak of landmarks, currents, and weather patterns in ways their ancestors would recognize. Though our ships now carry sophisticated electronic equipment, the fundamental relationship between sailor and sea remains unchanged from the days when dragon-prowed vessels first ventured beyond the horizon in search of new worlds. Modern navigation owes much to these Norse pioneers. Their system of dividing the horizon into 8 sections evolved into our 32-point compass rose. Their practical observations of celestial bodies prefigured later developments in astronomical navigation. Their understanding of seasonal weather patterns laid groundwork for meteorological science. Even their use of landmark recognition and mental mapping anticipated modern cognitive approaches to spatial navigation. Though our methods have become more sophisticated, the core principles of wayfinding established by Viking sailors remain relevant in today's maritime world. As we reflect on how Viking warriors found distant lands across open oceans without maps or instruments, we uncover not just a historical curiosity, but a testament to human ingenuity and courage. In their navigation of uncharted waters, the Vikings embodied the explorer's spirit, that restless curiosity that drives us to look beyond known horizons. From the wooden longships of the North Atlantic to modern spacecraft navigating the solar system, we continue their legacy of journey and discovery, always searching for what lies beyond the next wave.